Marriage is often described as a promise built on love, trust, and respect. When two people stand together and vow to share their lives, they believe those promises will hold them through good days and bad ones. That was what I believed when I married my wife. I thought our bond was strong enough to survive anything. For years, I trusted her with my whole heart. We were not perfect, of course. No marriages. We had arguments about little things, sometimes even about big things. But at the end of the day, I always felt we were on the same team. She was not just my wife. She was my best friend, my partner, and the one person I thought would always stand by me. I never imagined that one sentence from her lips could change everything. This story is not about a single mistake or a simple misunderstanding. It is about the moment I realized that the person I loved no longer saw our marriage the way I did. Her words cut deeper than any fight we ever had. To her, it was just a sentence, maybe even something she thought would soften the blow. But to me, it was a betrayal that could never be undone. It all began after what was supposed to be a fun girls' trip. When she returned, the distance in her eyes told me something had shifted. And then came the words I will never forget. Let's just be friends. That moment, my heart broke. But even in my pain, I knew my answer. I could not stay. I could not pretend. And so when she said friends, I said goodbye. Life before the girls' trip felt normal, at least on the surface. My wife and I had been married for a few years, and though we faced our share of ups and downs, I believe we were holding on together. She often spoke about needing a break from the routine, saying how much she missed spending time with her old friends. When the idea of a girls' trip came up, she was so excited that I could see the sparkle in her eyes. At first, I hesitated. Something in my heart made me uneasy. I had nothing against her friends, but the way she talked about the trip gave me a strange feeling I couldn't explain. Still, I didn't want to seem controlling or mistrustful. Trust, after all, was the foundation of our marriage. So, I pushed aside my doubts and encouraged her to go. You deserve it, I told her, hoping that by supporting her, our bond would grow stronger. In the days leading up to the trip, I noticed her energy shift. She spent more time on her phone, often smiling at messages I couldn't see. When I asked what was funny, she would laugh it off and say, "Oh, just the girls planning things." I told myself not to overthink it. Everyone deserves some private conversations with their friends. She shopped for new clothes, packed carefully, and seemed more excited than I had seen her in months. I wanted to share in her happiness. But deep inside, a small voice whispered that something felt off. I silenced it, reminding myself that marriage cannot survive without trust. The night before she left, we had dinner together. She kissed me goodnight, but her mind already seemed far away. I convinced myself it was just anticipation for the trip. I had no idea that the decision to let her go freely would change everything between us. When the trip finally began, I told myself everything would be fine. She promised to call and text whenever she could, and I trusted her. On the first day, she sent me a picture with her friends at the airport. She looked happy, and I felt relieved. Maybe my worries had been nothing more than imagination. But as the days went by, things began to feel strange. At first, her texts were short but cheerful. Then they became less frequent. Hours would pass without a single reply. When I asked if everything was okay, she would respond with excuses like, "Sorry, we were so busy," or "I must have left my phone in the room." I wanted to believe her, but something about the tone felt distant, almost forced. One evening, I tried to call her. The phone rang, and when she finally answered, the noise in the background was loud, like a party. She sounded distracted, almost irritated that I called. "Can I talk to you later? We're in the middle of something," she said quickly before hanging up. I sat in silence, staring at the phone, feeling a knot in my stomach. On social media, I noticed she was tagged in a few photos. At first, they seemed harmless, her and her friends smiling at a restaurant, shopping, or sightseeing. But then I noticed inconsistencies. She told me she was staying in for the night, yet someone had posted a group photo of her at a bar. Another picture showed her sitting close to a man I didn't recognize. She never mentioned him. My mind raced, but I tried to calm myself. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, that maybe it was just a stranger who happened to be in the shot. But deep down, the uneasy feeling grew stronger. By the third day, her messages became so rare that I stopped expecting them. I began to realize that maybe my trust had been misplaced. Still, I held on to hope. I wanted her to return home, to explain everything, to prove that I was wrong. Little did I know, the truth waiting for me would be worse than anything I imagined. The day she came back from the trip, I was waiting at the airport. I had missed her, despite the strange feelings I carried throughout the week. When I first saw her walking toward me, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Something about her seemed different. Her hug was quick, almost mechanical, as if she were forcing herself to act normal. On the way home, I asked her how the trip went. She gave short answers, saying things like it was fun, and we did a lot of shopping. Usually, she would talk nonstop after vacation, sharing every little detail. This time, she seemed guarded, careful with her words, as though she was hiding something. At home, I noticed she unpacked quickly and avoided eye contact. That night, when I tried to hold her, she pulled away gently, saying she was tired. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my heart heavy. Something was terribly wrong, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. A few days later, I finally asked her directly, "Is there something you need to tell me?" For a moment, she froze. Then, with a deep breath, she sat down across from me. Her hands trembled as she said, "I made some mistakes on the trip." I felt my chest tighten. My worst fears were becoming real. I asked her what she meant, but instead of apologizing, her next words cut me deeper than I could have imagined. She looked me straight in the eye and said softly, "Maybe we should just be friends." Friends? The word echoed in my mind like a cruel joke. Friends after years of marriage, after vows and promises? Friends after I gave her my trust and my heart? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I wanted her to explain, to tell me why she thought such words could fix the pain she had caused. Instead, she spoke as though ending our marriage was nothing more than a change in status, like switching seats at a table. "We don't have to hate each other," she added. "We can still care about each other as friends." Her tone was calm, almost casual, but for me, it was a storm. In that moment, I realized the woman sitting in front of me no longer valued what we had built together. To her, it was already gone. I sat there in silence, feeling the weight of betrayal crash down. And though my lips did not speak the words yet, in my heart, I already knew my answer. If she wanted friendship after breaking our bond, then she would have to live without me. After her confession, I walked through the next few days like a man in a fog. I replayed her words over and over in my head. Maybe we should just be friends. It felt unreal, like a cruel dream I couldn't wake up from. How could someone I loved so deeply reduce our marriage to nothing more than friendship? I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but instead, I found myself drowning in silence. Anger and sadness fought inside me. One moment, I wanted to throw everything away. The next, I wanted to hold on, hoping it was just a mistake she would regret and fix. But deep down, I knew things had changed forever. Nights were the hardest. I would lie awake, staring at the empty space beside me, remembering how it used to feel when she curled up next to me. I thought about the promises we made, the laughter we shared, and the life we had built together. All of it now felt fragile, like a glass shattered on the floor, impossible to put back together. I questioned myself endlessly. Was I not enough? Did I fail her somehow? Or was her betrayal simply a reflection of her own choices, not mine? These thoughts twisted inside me, leaving me restless and exhausted. Still, a part of me longed for her to show remorse, to fight for us, to say she had made a terrible mistake. But instead, she acted calm, even distant, as if her decision was final. That hurt the most, not just her betrayal, but her lack of regret. In those moments of pain, a quiet truth began to rise within me. Friendship could never replace the bond we once shared. Trust, once broken, does not return easily, and love without respect is no love at all. As much as it tore me apart, I began to see the path ahead. Staying would mean living in a shadow of what once was. Leaving would break me, but it might also set me free. I knew I couldn't live in silence forever. The weight inside me grew heavier each day, and pretending everything was normal only made the pain worse. One evening, I asked her to sit down. My heart was pounding, but my voice was calm. I need to understand. I began. You said, we should just be friends. Do you even realize what that means to me? She sighed, as if I was making things harder than they needed to be. I don't want to hurt you, she said softly, but I don't feel the same anymore. I care about you, but not like before. As friends, we could still be in each other's lives without all this pressure. Her words cut me again, but this time I didn't let them sink me. I listened quietly, my eyes on her, trying to see if she felt even a trace of regret. But she looked strangely calm, almost relieved to say it aloud. So, I asked slowly, you betray our vows, you go on a trip, and now you sit here asking me to accept friendship in place of marriage? She bit her lip. It wasn't planned. It just happened. But I don't want us to end badly. Can't we at least stay close? You're important to me. I took a deep breath. My hands were trembling, but my voice stayed steady. No, I said firmly. You made your choice. Friendship cannot replace love, respect, and loyalty. You broke what we had, and there is no going back. Her eyes widened. She hadn't expected me to be so direct. So that's it? You're just leaving? She asked, her voice rising. I nodded slowly. When you said friends, I said goodbye. The room went quiet. She stared at me, stunned, as if my calmness shook her more than if I had shouted. She wanted me to beg, to fight, to cling to her even after betrayal. But instead, I chose dignity. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of losing me, but fear of realizing she no longer had control over me. In that moment, I felt both broken and free. After that night of confrontation, the choice became clear to me. It was not an easy decision. I had built my life around her, and walking away meant tearing down years of love, memories, and dreams. But I also knew staying would destroy me even more. Every glance at her would remind me of betrayal. Every word would taste like poison. I spent a few days in silence, thinking carefully about my next steps. Divorce was not something I had ever imagined for myself. I had promised forever, and breaking that promise felt like failure. But then I asked myself, was it really me who failed, or was it her? The answer was obvious. I had given my best, and she had thrown it away. So I called a lawyer. The words fell heavy on my tongue as I explained my situation, but at the same time, I felt a strange sense of relief. I was taking control of my life again. I was no longer a prisoner of her choices. When I told her my decision, she didn't believe me at first. You're overreacting, she said, her voice sharp. People go through worse and stay together. We can still be friends. I shook my head. Marriage isn't about friendship. It's about trust, love, and loyalty. You broke all three. I won't live in the ruins of what we had. Her calm mask finally cracked. Anger flashed in her eyes, followed by desperation. But nothing she said could change my mind. I had chosen self-respect over broken promises. Filing for divorce hurt, but also healed. It was a line I needed to draw, the final act of saying, I deserve better. Once the divorce papers were filed, the atmosphere in our home changed completely. She no longer carried the calm and confident tone she once had. Instead, she moved between anger and regret. One moment, she would shout that I was throwing away everything we had. The next, she would quietly ask if we could start fresh as friends. But I had already given my answer. My heart was closed to her now. Her family tried to call me, asking me to reconsider. Some of my own friends asked if I was sure about such a big decision. But those who truly understood me supported my choice. They knew that trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild. In the weeks that followed, I noticed how different I felt. The pain was still there. It cut deep, and some nights I lay awake replaying everything in my mind. But alongside the pain came a strange sense of freedom. I no longer had to question where she was, who she was with, or whether her words were true. The silence of the house hurt, but also brought peace. She, on the other hand, seemed restless. I heard from mutual friends that she was upset I didn't chase her, that I didn't fight harder to keep her. She expected me to beg, to hold on to her even after betrayal. But instead, I walked away with my dignity. That shocked her more than anything else. Slowly, I began to rebuild my life. I focused on work, on friends who stood by me, and on myself. Each day, the heavy weight on my chest grew lighter. The scars remained, but I knew they would one day become reminders, not a loss, but a strength. Looking back, I realized that betrayal is not just about the act. It is about the choices that lead to it and the words that follow. When she said, "Let's just be friends," she may have thought she was softening the truth. But for me, it was the final proof that our marriage was already over her heart. Friendship could never replace the vows we made, and respect could never be rebuilt from broken trust. The experience taught me some painful but powerful lessons. First, trust is the most valuable part of any relationship. Once it is broken, love alone cannot hold things together. Second, dignity matters. I could have begged her to stay or tried to forgive her without real change, but that would have meant losing myself. By walking away, I chose self-respect over false hope. I also learned that endings are not always failures. Yes, my marriage ended, but it ended because I refused to accept less than what I deserved. Sometimes the strongest act of love is not holding on, but letting go. Pain still lingers, and there are moments when the memories return, both good and bad. But instead of bitterness, I try to carry wisdom. I know now what I will never accept again in my life: lies, betrayal, or half-hearted love. In the end, when she said friends, I said goodbye. And though goodbye was hard, it opened the door for something far greater: freedom, healing, and a chance to build a future where respect and loyalty are never treated as optional,